Just say your name and what you do, and then I'll ask you a question or two, and we'll get going.
Okay. My name is Eliia Bizzarri, and I'm a Windsor chairmaker here in Hillsborough, North Carolina.
So, Eliia, you're one of the few people I know who could have said to have had what amounts to a real apprenticeship, and then went out into the world actually doing it. You, Peter Ross, sort of, and there are a few handful of others. Tell me what that was like, starting the first day in Curtis's shop. Do you remember anything? Like, what did you do at the beginning?
Yeah, I went up there and volunteered for a week. So he had a student in the shop, Julian Whitaker, and I was there hanging out. And so he had me hewing blanks for the lathe, maple blanks to go on the lathe. And he called me in when they were going to do a demo on how to bore holes or something. I could barely comprehend it. I was 17 at the time and had made very little, a couple stools and things like that. And Curtis's work was far beyond anything I had ever done. So yeah, I was just doing whatever he could put me on, and he was not making anything off of me. It was I was just the generosity on his part,
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, it was not like a traditional apprenticeship where you signed papers, you were there, you committed to 5 years, and the first third of that you were paying for the first third you were a pain in the ass, and the last third you were paying for being a pain in the ass. He had no guarantee that I would ever come back, but I did.
So after the week, and you volunteered, how did it morph into something more structured or permanent or long term?
It never got more structured. He just said, "Hey, come back." And recently he told me, well, I thought, well, maybe I'm done with that. But I did come back, and yeah, we grew into a lifelong friendship, and I spent 4 or 5 years. I mean, we never signed papers. I just would come for a week to 5 weeks and live in his shop, build a chair with him, work for him in the mornings for 5 hours in the morning, and then he'd help me build a chair in the afternoons as he came and went from the shop. And we did that. He'd just say, come back. And then eventually he started sending me home with a log, and I turned the parts for his classes, and he paid me to do that. And it sort of morphed into, hey, come on by and we'll hang out in the shop. And so it was never a very formal thing.
Yeah. So, but you lived in the loft there. I think I've seen that.
Yeah. Curtis has a 16 by 20 shop there, timber frame with a loft. And when the day I got there, he was rigging up a ladder so I could climb up into the loft. You could hook it up onto the wall there, and I'd climb up there. And he had a bed tucked under the eaves, and so he lives, as many of you know, right on the railroad tracks. There's about 100 feet from the railroad tracks or something. And so the first night I was there, I remember laying up under the eaves, and you couldn't sit up in bed. So the train went by at 2:00 in the morning. I didn't know what was about to hit me. So I sat up, whacked my head on the ceiling, didn't know what was going on. But it was good. Yeah, I cooked my food on the bench, and then they had a bedroom in the basement, and I'd walk up to the garden of the basement and do my dishes and come back, go to sleep, and do it all over again the next day.
Wow. So at that time, were you thinking, this is what I want to do for a living, is make chairs for a living, or were you still unsure?
Well, chairs seemed, when I first went there, chairs seemed like they were way too complicated for a little old me to build. And it was only with Curtis's encouragement and learning more about it that I thought chairs. But hand tool woodworking, I grew up when I was 8 watching Roy Underhill's show, and I wanted to become a miniature Roy Underhill that made a living doing that kind of work, or become a beekeeper. I didn't know which. And so I had bees, and I had a little shop, and I was working on both those things. And thank God I didn't become a beekeeper. It's a great thing, but boy, it's hard to make a living doing that.
That's
harder than this.
Wow. Okay, that's saying something.
Yeah.
So if somebody was your age and 17 years old and thought they might want to do hand tool woodworking for a living, what would you tell them to do?
Do it. Just do it.
How to get training? Don't get training, just watch the videos, or
you know, there's no one great answer to that. I mean, if you can find somebody who's as generous as Curtis is, and you get along with them, and they get along with you, and they're willing to take you on, then great. When I went there, I had already worked with Jane Alexander for 3 weeks. And is that true? Well, it was right in there. And I'd taken a class at Drew's, and I had a shop, and I was working in it full time. I made this bench by myself with hand tools that I had no idea how to sharpen. Um, and so I was not the most adept woodworker, but I had determination, and I'd done a lot. And so I think that helped. Um, so there's not one way to go about it, but just doing it is where it's at. And then yeah, I'm training if you can get it, but it's either really expensive or really hard to find, one of the two. Yeah.
so if you weren't a chair maker today, what do you think you'd be doing? Bees or something else?
I have no earthly idea. Thank God I'm a chair maker. Maybe I'd be doing bees. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
All right.